Okay, guys. So I thought that I would record kind of a continuation on some of the ink, step by step, kind of an ink practice that you can do. So what I did is I took my 2B pencil and I just whipped up some sketches onto the Bristol board. Okay, you got some Bristol board pieces, and I just did 2 squares and just freehanded some circles here, just real free. The last one I did very light because this is going to be a different kind of a circle on that technique with the ink. So what we're going to do is right here is I'm going to just do basic linear hatching. Remember I was talking about linear before? Well, linear is just kind of in a straight line. So what I've done now, what I'm doing right now is I've got my ink, right? Then you'll have your little container of ink. Dip your pen in. So just so it's up to the barrel part. You don't want to dip the whole thing in and get the handle. We don't want ink on the handle, okay? That part. And remember when I said I forgot the cloths and stuff? I found them when I got home. But anyway, what we're going to do is for linear is this is the linear hatching that we're going to do, okay? So you just take it from left to right, follow it all the way across. Remember, this is the top surface, so this isn't going to be as dark as the sides depending on the light source, right? So if the light source is coming from this direction, this surface is going to be fairly light. So we'll do a linear, just, oops, that's off, that's off. That should be running parallel to this line right here, okay? So I got a little wonky there. All right, so then we're going to go make sure you got enough in there. And so then what we're going to do on the vertical, because this is the shaded side, it's going to be a little darker, right? So we're going to come down vertical, but tighter together. I didn't get enough ink on there. So here we go here. I'm going to bring it down, bring it down, bring it down, right? We're pulling. We're not going to push. I don't, pushing on these nibs isn't really the best way to use them. When we get into the wider ones, we might play with those when we get into perspectives. But you see here now how much darker this looks when compared to this surface and this surface. Now, even for the shade, you know, the offset shade, we'll do the same, right? We're going to do the same. Okay? Kind of get the idea? And if you think, well, actually, you know what? You could probably even go over all of this with the black just to make that stand out a little bit more too. Now this one, we're going to do, this is the very basic. So this is your linear, right? So linear. And you can write that in on the top there so that you've always got a reference for it. So this is actually creates volume when you draw in a series of straight lines, okay? Varying the distance between them and the thickness of the line creates the different effects, right? So when we had them far apart, that gave the illusion of it being just a light surface. So, and the shades, anything that's going to be in the shade is going to have a lot darker and closer together, right? Okay, so then we're going to, the next box I want you to do is we're going to call this cross hatching. Remember we were playing with the cross hatching before? So what we're going to do is we're going to take that box, we're going to come all the way across, right? Do it lightly on the top, like nice and wide, right? Keep that all nice and wide. And then we're going to do, well, let's say the light source is coming more this way, okay? That way you can get a pretty decent. So this one is called cross hatching, okay? Okay, so then we're gonna, that's gonna make this here and this here a little bit darker. Okay, so let's go down straight, well, as straight as you can. Make sure you got your ink well. See that? I don't know if you can see that. Nope, you can't. But I haven't gone up to the line. Don't go up there because the ink gets caught up in there. And remember to clean your pens. So we're going to come down. Actually, you know what I forgot to do? It's okay. We got to cross hatch the top with the same equal spaced lines across, right? Because that's a kind of a light. That's a light surface. I'm just going to go on the edge of the cube. So then with this one here, it's going to be semi-shade. Now you notice that if we do this with the crow quill, these lines are going to be far thinner. Okay, they're going to be much finer. Now, this would be good if you did this with the crow quill and with this one here, this exercise, so you can see the difference between the two tips, okay, a fine tip and this one. And then you could do a third one with the extra fine pen, the art pen that I put in your container or in your packages as well. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to kind of cross hatch here. So obviously I'm left-handed. You're going to do yours your way. You're going to go from left to right. I'm going from right to left. And I generally actually try to do things from right to left. It keeps my hands clean too. But in this case, so just so because this ink is still wet, I'm going to turn this. This is my shadow side, so it's going to have more shadow on this side. So I'm actually going to make this a lot tighter, right? Make the lines much closer together. Right? And then we go down from the top down. I'm pulling, remember? Don't worry about them not being straight. That comes with time. Even with me doing as much as I have, I still don't have them completely straight. I've got more control. See, the closer to this you are, the more control you have over it. And don't forget, don't be too heavy-handed, because you'll put pressure and damage the nib. Okay, so you see that's a little bit darker. Don't know if it's not, then you know you haven't pressed hard enough. Well, I'm not going to say press hard enough because you don't really want that to happen. But it does. It shows a defining difference, doesn't it? So then now, because this part here is actually going to be darker than all of them, because this is the shadow that this is creating, we're going to probably even go tighter. So this shadow tends to be a little oblique this way, yeah? So we'll do it like this. Okay? And these, as it gets further out, closer to the light source, it's going to kind of get out that way. But here, so what I'm going to do here, though, is because this is tighter in, I'm actually going to come in a little more. I'm going to make lots of lines here. Yeah? So you kind of get that idea? Okay? So there's your cross hatching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse this out, right? Just to get, because I don't want to get my, I don't want the ink to pile up and dry on there. So take a nice cloth, right? Microcloths are pretty good, but if you've got a nice, just a nice Viva, they work pretty good because they're almost like a material. So now we're going to go into this area here, into the circled area. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to kind of do like almost like a contour, right? So we're going to call that one a cross contour. And contour generally is where we flow with the shape, okay? So we're going to do a cross contour. So what that's going to do is we're going to call that cross, whoopsie. When I was cleaning my pen, I didn't push that in. You want to make sure that I cleaned it and it pushed it out. There we go. Okay, here we go. So I've got that circle there. If you need to cheat with a template to get a circle, go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to kind of come around like this. And because it's circular, we want to kind of follow. You can go left to right, right to left, right? Left to right, right to left, left to right, right. These are interesting, okay? These are interesting ones. So then, to get that cross, we got to imagine that that spot there, right? Actually, we could even just do that all the way to the top. Then we're going to follow. See that? We're going to follow that. We're going to follow the shape of the sphere. Okay? So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to come back on the other side. Okay? Just come right around. Now notice as I come towards the center, it's less curved. Oops, I smeared. It's okay. It's all good. The other thing is what I do too when I'm doing pencil and ink work. I'll also take a piece of paper, right, and just kind of bring it up to it. And that way you can save your hand from getting into ink and stuff like that. Okay, so all splotches aside, I'm just going to rinse this for a minute because I want you to see this up close, a little closer because my camera is a little bit further away. It's not the best. So you see that, how we're going there? And minus the splotches. So you can outline that again. And now let's say our light source coming down here. I'm going to actually, I'll bring the ink on the outside of this so that we've got that. But I'm going to make it so that the light source is still coming from this direction again. We'll make this a little darker, okay? So let's go with that. I'm going to take that, just follow around that so it gives it a more defined edge, right? That circle or sphere. Kind of committed to that. So now my light source, once again, is going to come right about that direction. So the light's on this side, so of course this is going to be a little bit tighter to here, isn't it? Right? But down near this side, near the bottom, it's going to be more so. So you can add some more vertical lines going on in there, right? Just kind of visualize where that light source is coming from. And then you can kind of go across here like this again, right? Actually, this will probably come out a little more. Because this was so thick, I was able actually, and the ink is still wet, I can actually pick up that ink and carry it on without having to dip back into my well. Okay, so you kind of see where that's going there. And then, of course, now then we got to do the surface, so that, you know, say that's your back wall there. And then that light source is coming down this way, so my shadow is probably going to be right about there, okay? So then we do that. Right? Right? And because it's closer to this, it's always darker the very bottom, right close to the form, right? It's always darker there. and a little bit lighter as you go out. Okay, so there you go. All right, so now for this one, that is your contour. So contour is following the shape, okay, for contour. And that's generally, you see that more so in, you know, your spheres. And it's a great technique for conveying form. It, you know, it follows the entire shape of the object. And it actually makes your drawing look more 3D with the curve lines. And then even with your shading too, you can see how this actually took a lot of shape as a result. Yeah. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I was going to do the wash on here, but I think I'll do the wash here because it's off to this side. And this one here, I think what I want to do on this one was stippling. Okay, I think with this one we'll do the stippling. So that was with, if you remember on that sheet I gave you, not, I didn't really, on the stippling one, that's why I did this one really light. I should have done the stippling, but it's in pencil, so I can erase that after, okay? So what I'm going to do with the stippling, remember up at the top, it's just the dots are going to be very light and very minimal, right? So you just do your dots really far apart, right? Just tiny, tiny little dots along the edge you can do just so that you capture the edge. Yeah. And far apart, right? Because there's less. This is just giving you the idea of shape once. So you'll notice this once that's erased, that will have that spherical form. So then, of course, as we get to the bottom, like if we're doing the same thing again, we got our light source coming this way, okay? Then we'll have that, well, I'll use the same horizon line back there. So then as we get more towards this part, right, our stippling is going to get closer together. This one will probably take the longest. Right? You can really fill up your well there. Seeing that you put a little bit more pressure so more ink comes off of the tip here. See, when you put pressure there, that will split a little, and then the ink flows. See there, as I'm not sure if you can see where I press, it splits open a little, the end, and the ink flows, almost literally falls off. So just want to make sure we got the well filled up in the back there. And this will be kind of random, but a little bit closer together, right? Should have did smaller spheres because I don't want this to run into too long. But so what I wanted to do is just kind of give you the idea, because I want you to do the same. And this is really cool. Stippling is a really cool effect. It's one of the most tedious of the techniques. Oh, I didn't get enough. There we go. My inkwell is getting low here, so that's why I wasn't filling up. And you'll probably go into your inkwell a lot more often. But I don't want to take up all the time on this video doing the stippling. You can do that off camera, and I think you get the idea. But what I want to see is that this part right in here, all of this area in here, and then of course the stippling for your shadow, it's going to have the same idea as this, only far more dots and really tight together, okay? So because I don't want to take up the time for the video. But stippling, oh, it's so time consuming, but I'll tell you, it probably has one of the coolest techniques if you have the patience to do it. So you can really do a lot. And that's what that one kid I was telling you about earlier today, where he did that very involved picture with ink. And it was almost all kind of stippling, and it's just incredible. But anyway, so that's the stippling effect. This here, I really like this, but it is very time consuming. And that's where You can probably use your felt tip pens if you want to get into that, depending on your outcome. I still like to use the dip pens um, for fine arts and stuff like that. But as long as you get the high quality um, permanent art pens, then go ahead, and you probably will get a lot better, more results from that a little bit quicker. Now, scumbling is a technique where another name for it is called the Brillo pad technique. Okay, and why they say that is because for scrumbling, oops, it's kind of like, oops, sorry about that, I hit the camera. It's like making scribble marks. So you can kind of go a little bit crazy with the movements to get to get your visual interest. And I like scumbling for hair and things like that too. And scumbling also is, it's almost like using a verb, like it's got action and movement to it. Okay. So scumbling is just where you kind of go, right? It's just kind of scribbling. So just follow inside the sphere. Just kind of go all over. So same thing here too, right? We'll make it nice and big and loosey-goosey up at the top, right? Stay within that circle, and then when you erase it, now then when we get down into the shadow area, right? If we keep the same light source, so our scribbling or our scumbling is going to be a little bit more crazy down at the bottom, isn't it? I love this one. It's almost like doodling on steroids. Scribbling on steroids, I guess. So, and of course now near the bottom, right? And then if the light source is there again, then we're going to have that, right? And you got to do this really tight. This actually is a really good one for doing hair and background on landscape, to kind of depict. And then, of course, we go out a little lighter out here, right? But right down in here is going to be really tight. Okay? So that's the scumbling. And then what we're going to do then now is we're going to do that wash, and we're going to do it real quick. Thank you. So we take our brush. So remember with the palettes that we had here, and we had the Chinese, the sakura black, and the Chinese white here. And so we're going to take that number 6 brush. You can use the number 3, but use the number 6 round and the number 3 round if there's anybody else watching this besides my students. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to do a value wash, right? So I'm going to do that on this side here because it's kind of further away from me. But first what I want to do, you can do this with your ink as well too. You can just do a straight ink wash. And the more water you add, the less. Actually, that might be a good exercise for you to do as well. But I'm really big on you wanting on picking up the value washes. So for instance, if we still keep that idea that the light source is coming from this side, right? So then we go with that lighter value at the top, right? So we'll bring that in. That's that one we mixed earlier with just that. It's the second. And the other thing too is you can always kind of pencil in an area because there's always a white highlight on a sphere, right? So I'm just going to bring that up to the camera a little closer. So there's always like a white highlight, and I'll go back in that with the Chinese white. Whereas typically I would just leave that on the page and let the white of the paper be the high point. But just for now, we'll just continue with what we were doing. And then, of course, then we'll come in with a mid-value tone, right? And we'll come down a little lower. That needs to be just a little bit darker, right? You'll mix it up. Remember I was saying you play with it, play with your values. We can always add a little bit more. as we go, right? Right, there we go. Now I'm going to add a little bit more. Actually, that's probably a little bit too dark there, so I'm going to bring it down to the bottom, right? So you get that? So that's a dark gray. White, I'm going to take that out, but then I'm going to come in with just straight black. I'm going to come right down to the bottom here, right? Because there's my shadow. And then there's the shadow here, right? See how much fun that is? See, and that's not completely black. There's still a little bit of a wash there, but that's okay. So that was that was very quick, right? And then I'm just going to come in here with my Chinese white. But like I said, far better if you can just let the white of the paper, okay? So that is that. That's the exercises I want you to play with. So I want you to do with that with the medium pen and your fine pen, and you can actually do it with the hand pen as well, okay? So that's one of the exercises I wanted to do today. I had these photocopied, but you can just take your Bristol paper and just, even if you want to use your straight edge to make your squares, don't worry about it. And if you want to use, you know, a template or a compass to make your circles, it's not about the perfection of those right now. We're going to work on form next week. Right now, it's about getting used to your values and what your ink and your cross hatching is and everything is going to do for you, okay? So it's very important to get a hold of these kind of techniques as we go into our form, okay? So I hope that helps. And okay, on to the next.